G'day ladies and gents, welcome to an afternoon or lunchtime update for landfalling tropical cyclone Zelia. Tropical cyclone Zelia, still category 5, has just undergone what we call an eyewall replacement cycle. Let's just go back through that in the last 6 hours. She was looking pretty worse for wear there at a time. So she had a really nice core there at the start of the night, and then through this morning you can see there where we're trying to replace the inner eye with an outer eye. It didn't look like the cleanest eyewall replacement cycle there you've ever seen, but she's managed to do it. She's managed to get through it, and now she's got a really nice eye, and she's intensifying again and coming onto the coastline around De Grey. Great news for Port Hedland. Hey, listen, if you're going to take anything out of this, that means the core part of the circulation, that's this part here, about that 15 to 20k stretch just west of the circulation centre, that ain't coming on to you. So even if it goes direct south from here, direct south, there it is there, that is a situation where even at that point, that 30 kilometre stretch is just east of Port Hedland. So even if it drops dead south from here, and it doesn't look like it's going to drop dead south, it looks like it's going to keep moving south-southeast. So that keeps the very destructive core out, and we're stuck in the Cat 1, Cat 2 level winds, right? So expect those winds to increase a little bit in the next couple of hours, but they're not going to get into very destructive core winds, all right? And that, I think, is the most important part of this. No, that's the second most important part. The most important part is that the cyclone is going to hit on high tide, but it's going to hit well east of you. So what does that mean? It means that continuation of southeasterly and southerly and then eventually southwesterly winds will keep the water from coming onto the coast. So in fact, your surge is a negative surge. Your tide is going to be lower than the high tide because of the force that we're pushing this water towards the cyclone, all right, because of the wind field. Obviously, the flip side is occurring here between Cape Carodron and the De Grey River mouth, but there's not too many people that live there, okay? And you know, if you had to choose something, you'd choose this coastal crossing in here way before you'd choose something anywhere near Port Hedland. It's really intensifying sharply in this last hour or two as it approaches the coast. As I say, it's not far away now from being from making landfall, and it's going to make landfall right over the top of De Grey, and there's very little that's going to change that. I think in the current scheme of things, I'm not seeing any sort of wobbling to the west at this stage. It looks set on this trajectory, and there's nothing there that suggests to me in terms of its steering that's going to change. If it does slightly wobble, it'll wobble south, but it won't come back to the west from here. Right, the closest model to getting this right in the last little while is the Icon model here, and what we see there, probably a touch too far east, so we can bring everything back a 5 to 10k. But let's have a look at what that does to our surface winds. So what we're looking at for Port Hedland, nothing more than about a Category 1 or maybe low-end Category 2 impact for Port Hedland. Remember, we want to bring this back a few kilometres because it's not going to hit quite as far to the east, but just bring it back another 5 to 10 k's, and you can see that we're probably going to see sustained winds at 35 to 45 knots and gusts getting up to about 60 knots or so, I would imagine. We don't have wind gusts for this particular model, but that's what I would imagine we're going to see on the western edge of this circulation. Once again, what saves us from getting bigger winds, and you can see on the eastern side of the circulation we've actually got the bigger winds, is the fact that they're coming over land. So the sustained wind speeds that are coming through Port Hedland aren't going to be quite as significant as, say, if you were 20 k's offshore. If you were 20 k's offshore, those sustained wind speeds would be at least 10 to 15 knots higher, okay? So you'd be looking at Category 2 impacts offshore, likely Category 1 impacts over headland at this stage. And you can see there the cyclone continues tracking in a general southerly direction. Our winds ease fairly quickly on the northern side of the circulation through the afternoon. But that appears to be the closest model I've got to give you an idea of your wind field and your wind experiences. Right, and with this cyclone rapidly approaching a landfall, we can see that our winds have turned from east-southeasterly to southeasterly and just starting to turn south-southeasterly now. So that's telling us the cyclone's making an imminent approach to landfall. And what we can see here is that we're gusting into those mid-40s at the moment. Wouldn't be surprised to add another 10 to 15 knots to that, but I would be very surprised if we started to get the 150s, 170s that we would have got if the system was, say, 20 or 30 k's closer to us. So I think we're going to max out at around that Cat 1 level wind with maybe an odd place that might see a Cat 2 gust at some stage. That's the expectation. We're almost at Cat 1 level right now, right? So once that turns to 63 kilometres an hour, we're at Cat 1 level winds in Port Hedland. All of our other dynamic aids, which we use most frequently, unfortunately are unavailable or they're a little bit inaccurate. So we can't use the Euro model for its wind field because obviously the system isn't going to cross where the Euro model has it. So the Euro model will overblow the likely winds around Port Hedland because of that, right? Because the cyclone is going to cross, as I say, this is the model and this is reality. So you can see that reality is at least 30 k's further eastwards of where the model has it. So if we took the winds, say 30 k's, so if we use that analysis and we take the winds from 30 k's west of Port Hedland, that's here. So we're getting maximum winds at around about 50 to 60 knots. So that's around about that 110, 120 kilometre an hour if we were to transpose the actual circulation from the modelled circulation. And from rainfall, we're going to see intermittent rain bands, but we're not going to see the core rain band of the circulation itself, the one with the big winds and the huge rain. That's going to hit De Grey very shortly, but it's not going to hit Port Hedland, and it's not going to hit South Hedland. And what we're expecting, therefore, is fairly muted rainfalls on that western side. Remember, the western side was only going to give you rain if you got into the western core, not if you're outside the western core. So we're still going to get rain, we're still going to get these intermittent significant showers, and we're still going to get squalls from that, but we're not going to get the big rain from the system. That's going to be left for De Grey, and a little bit further eastwards, we can see that quite a substantial amount of rainfall is falling out towards places like Pardue and Wallal. In fact, Pardue, I don't know if you've checked it out, but Pardue has had basically half a metre of rainfall in the last 2 and a bit days, which is just an incredible amount of rain. So southeasterly motion into landfall, and then a bit of a more of a southerly motion after landfall. So don't be shocked if that wind, just for that next couple of hours after landfall, is still quite strong from the south to southwest once the cyclone has come onto the coast. Once again, this is a much more accurate representation than any other model I've got to give you a look at, but we don't have that wind field modelling that we do with some of the others. But you can certainly see there that as the cyclone comes onto the coast, the southeasterlies at 25 to 35 knots sustained, and then as the cyclone hits the coast, that's when our strongest winds, as it comes on and hits the coast, literally just after it hits the coast, we're getting some of our biggest winds, particularly just offshore, because once again, when we take a look at the wind field, we're getting southerlies that turn southwesterlies and that increase offshore. And so, as I say, Category 1 winds, yep, absolutely. Category 2 winds, there's a small chance there that we nail Category 2 winds just on the really bottom end of the scale, right? And it might not be an official measurement, but there might be somewhere in the city that does get that Category 2 wind intensity. No storm surge, no stress for that, and the heavy rainfall aspect will be primarily east of you, but don't be shocked if there is a little bit of rain, a little bit of heavier rain as the cyclone comes onto the coastline. This is the absolute best possible news you could have hoped for this at lunchtime. Based on what we had this morning, it was looking a little bit more grim with the cyclone probably expected to make landfall this morning. I think we were talking about it being about 30 k's away instead of 60 k's away, and that would have put you right into this destructive wind field, and very destructive wind field, or at least on the western edge of it. The way it's looking now, and the way I think it's, I'm pretty sure it's going to pan out, is that you're just going to be in the damaging wind field rather than the destructive. And as I say, there might be an isolated gust that gets into destructive range, but it won't be the norm for the region. So that is fantastic news. No storm surge, no very destructive core. Brilliant stuff. That's what I wanted to deliver to you this afternoon. For the inland areas, everything we talked about this morning continues. The system will decay relatively quickly as it comes inland, and we're expecting Category 1 conditions around Marble Bar, Nullagine, and those sort of areas, and then weakening further as we go further southward. So expect to see some pretty nice observations coming out of Marble Bar, and I'll be looking forward to seeing some of the Port Hedland obs. But thankfully, the system is not going to hit you as a very destructive cyclone, which is brilliant. I'll be on Discord for another hour or so. Then I'm getting the hell out of here and going to the gym and chilling out. So if you want to talk to me on Discord, I'll be there from 1 till 2 p.m. Queensland time, just watching it come into the coast, and then I'm done.